In this video, we will start to look at Chapter 8, which is the different systems of the body. And in particular, this particular section is on 8.1, which looks at the different types of tissues. So we have different types of tissue, and they pretty much we'll find them into 4 different categories. So we have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue. And you can see from the list there that they serve different purposes. So epithelial tissue, it covers body surfaces and lines of body cavities. Connective tissue then binds and supports body parts. Muscular tissue, it moves the body and its parts. And then nervous tissue, which receives stimuli, processes information, and conducts nerve impulses. So we'll look at each of these in a little bit more detail. So with epithelial tissue, also referred to as epithelium, consists of tightly packed cells that form a continuous layer. And so some of the functions of these then, it covers surfaces and lines the body cavities. So with the external surface, it protects the body from injury and drying out, and also invasion by microbes. The internal surface, so lining the inner body cavities, it secretes mucus along the digestive tract. It sweeps up impurities from the lungs by means of cilia, and absorbs molecules from kidney tubules and the intestine through microvilli, which, as you recall, are the tiny little sort of extensions from a cell that increase surface area. So the structure of epithelial tissue then, it has a basement membrane and usually joins an epithelium to underlying connective tissue. So the epithelial tissue, it's classified according to the shape of the cell that it's composed of and the number of layers in the tissue. So the classification based on shape, we have squamous epithelium, sometimes referred to as squamous cell, so squamous cell epithelium. These are flattened cells. And then we have the cuboidal epithelium, so these cells obviously are cube-shaped. And then we have a columnar. And these are more rectangular shaped cells. Classification based on number of layers in the tissue, we have a simple epithelium, so that would be a single layer of cells. Then we have stratified, and that would be multiple layers. And then we have also what's referred to as pseudo-stratified. So it appears to be layered, but true layers do not exist because each of the cells actually touches the basement membrane. And so that's how we differentiate between them. So with true stratified epithelium, then not all cells will touch the basement membrane. In the simple epithelium, it will. And also in the pseudo-stratified, each of the cells actually touches the basement membrane. So here then are some diagrams of the different types. So on the left then we have the simple squamous, and you can see the basement membrane. Then each of the cells is in contact with the basement membrane. Then we have the pseudo-stratified, and you can see that in actual fact, each of the cells does come in contact with the basement membrane. There, they're showing the lining of the could be the lining of the trachea there. In any case, they're showing cilia on these particular cells, as well as the goblet cells, which secrete the mucus, which generally you will see on the surface of these of this particular tissue. Then on the far right, we have the stratified squamous, and that's generally skin is comprised of this type, as well as the lining of the nose, mouth, esophagus, the anal canal, and the vagina. Again, it's for protection, and so we have multi-layers. So again, making it more difficult then for any invaders to be able to enter the body itself through all of these many layers, including the basement membrane as well. And then here we have the different shapes. So here we've got on the left is the simple cuboidal, and you would find these in the lining of the kidney tubules, various glands, and they absorb molecules. And then on the right, then you see the simple columnar, and again being attached to the basement membrane, and also in this case you can see they've drawn into the goblet cells as well, which secrete mucus. So here you would find these in the lining of the small intestine and the oviducts, and again, there's absorption of nutrients with these particular cells. So when an epithelium secretes a product, then it's said to be glandular. So a gland can be a single epithelial cell, or it can contain many cells. So glands that secrete their product into ducts are called exocrine glands. So an example of that would be the salivary glands. And then glands that secrete their product into the bloodstream, these are called endocrine glands. So an example of that would be thyroid gland. Moving on then to connective tissue. Connective tissues, they have a wide variety of functions. And what they do is they bind organs together, provide support and protection, fills in spaces, also produces blood cells. So the tissue that produces the blood cell, it is considered to be a connective tissue, and stores fat as well. So connective tissue cells, they're widely separated by a solid jelly-like or a fluid matrix. And a non-fluid matrix may contain three types of fibers. So they could be of a white collagen type fiber, and contains collagen to give flexibility and strength. Then we have reticular fibers, and these are thin collagen fibers that form more of a supporting network. And then we have yellow elastic fibers, and these contain elastin in order to give elasticity to the tissue. So blood is considered a connective tissue, albeit a liquid, but it's then therefore a liquid connective tissue. So functions of blood then are to transport the nutrients and oxygen to tissue fluid. It removes carbon dioxide and other waste, distributes heat, is involved in fluid, ion, and pH balance, protects from disease, and prevents fluid loss through clotting. So the composition of blood, it is 55% plasma, and these would be inorganic and organic substances that are suspended in water. And then you have the formed elements, which comprises about 45% of blood, and this would be the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the blood platelets. And so if you were to take a blood sample and put it into a centrifuge, what they refer to as spin it down, then you would get something that looks like this. So you would have the plasma layer on top, and then you would have the formed elements, which with generally the white blood cells and the platelets on top, and then the red blood cells making the bottom layer. So here again is the different components in blood. As you can see, once again, with a blood sample, you would have the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. And so blood is usually, it is classified as connective tissue because the cells are separated by a matrix, and in this case, plasma. So the formed elements, they consist of the several types of cells that we just mentioned, and they are illustrated for you here. And so then, again, if we look at the components of plasma itself, so we're just looking at plasma now. It would be 90 to 92% water, and then 8 to 10% solutes. And of those, then, you would find inorganic ions, also referred to as electrolytes. So sodium, calcium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, etc. And then gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide. Then you have your plasma proteins, so such as albumin, globulins, fibrinogen, and transport proteins. And then we have our organic nutrients like glucose, lipids, phospholipids, amino acids, etc. Then you also find the nitrogen-containing waste products, which are on their way to being gotten rid of, which would be urea, ammonia, and uric acid. And then you will find the regulatory substances in there as well, such as the hormones and enzymes. So red blood cells, also referred to as erythrocytes, these are small biconcave disc-shaped cells. They do not have nuclei any longer once they've become a mature red blood cell. And they contain the pigment hemoglobin, which makes the cells and the blood a reddish color. So hemoglobin associates with oxygen, allowing red blood cells to transport oxygen. White blood cells, also known as leukocytes, these are the larger cells that have a nucleus. So you can always tell a white blood cell just simply by it's a different color, obviously. It's more of a whiter kind of a color, and it has a nucleus. So these then fight infection through phagocytosis or through adaptive immunity. Then we have the platelets, also known as thrombocytes, and these are fragments of large cells present only in bone marrow, and these help to form plugs to seal damaged blood vessels. So these were platelets. They were formerly part of a larger cell, but the cell then breaks down and forms these smaller fragments, which are known as platelets. Then we have the muscular tissue as composed of cells called muscle fibers, and they function in voluntary and involuntary movement. And so we have skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. So the skeletal muscle then is attached by tendons to the bones of the skeleton, and they have striated cells with multiple nuclei. Actually, each cell can have several nuclei, and they function in voluntary movement. And so that term just kind of makes sense that if you choose to make some kind of a movement with any part of your body, you can do so with skeletal muscle, and that is all pretty much voluntary for the most part. Then we have smooth muscle, and these are more spindle-shaped cells with a single nucleus, and these do not have striations, and they're found in blood vessels and the walls of viscera, in other words, the organs of the body. And these function movements, these are not voluntary, so you cannot consciously contract these muscles. These just simply work under the what's referred to as the autonomic nervous system, and they are not under voluntary control. Then we have cardiac muscle. This is found only in the walls of the heart. These are striated cells with a single nucleus in this case. So that's how you can tell them apart from skeletal muscle. Also, these two are involuntary. We do not have any control really over the contraction of cardiac muscle. So then we have nervous tissue, and nervous tissue, it contains cells called neurons, which are present in the brain and spinal cord, and they serve the function for sensory input, which nerves conduct impulses from sensory receptors to the spinal cord and the brain, and then we have the integration of that data, and then we have a motor output. So nerves, they conduct nerve impulses away from the spinal cord and the brain to the muscles and the glands. So the structure of them then, nervous tissue contains neurons. So a neuron is a specialized cell. It has three parts. It has a cell body, and dendrites, which conduct the signals toward the cell body, and then axons. And the axons, they conduct nerve impulses away from the cell body. So you have dendrites conduct signals toward the cell body, and axons, which send nerve impulses away from the cell body. And then you have bundles of axons are referred to as nerves. And so that covers